Okay, the last thing I want to address then is the different classes of muscle fibers. We can't see this when we look at skeletal muscle under a microscope with our slides, but you can prepare slides with a special type of stain that will allow you to distinguish between these different classes of skeletal muscle fibers. Different fibers are better at doing different types of tasks. In other words, in doing one type of exercise, power, versus another type of exercise, endurance. And these different types of fibers also use different types of metabolic processes to generate their ATP. So here's we have type 1 and type 2 fibers. Type 1 fibers are called slow oxidative fibers. They're also called red fibers. They rely on aerobic respiration. And they have a slow twitch rate. Remember the muscle twitch? Where we had the latent period. Here's our stimulus. Here's our latent period. Here's the cross-bridge cycling. And then here's the relaxation. Slow twitch fibers typically do not go into those higher summation and things like that. Remember summation and incomplete tetanus? Slow twitch fibers don't do that. They have a very slow, steady rate of contraction, hence the name slow twitch. Type 2 fibers, on the other hand, are a little different. These are called fast glycolytic fibers. They're also known as white fibers, and they are anaerobic. They rely on anaerobic processes mainly. And these are fast twitch. These can contract very quickly, and actually we can get that summation and that incomplete tetanus that we talked about, that we demonstrated in lab. I'm going to give you an analogy that you all should be able to understand. One way to look at these different fibers, and it relates to red and white, is think about a turkey on Thanksgiving. You got the white meat, you got the dark meat. The white meat would be the type 2 fast glycolytic fibers. The type 1 would be the red slow twitch fibers, would be the dark meat, the legs and the thighs of the turkey. Now, domestic turkeys don't fly. I've never eaten wild turkey or seen wild turkey. I would imagine that wild turkeys, they do have a tendency to fly a little bit more than chickens do. So the breasts of the wild turkey might contain a little bit more type 1 fibers, but domestic turkeys and chickens don't really fly long distances. You ever tried to catch a chicken, chase a chicken and catch it? It's pretty difficult. I was doing it one time when I was in college. I was on this service trip, and we were working at a farm, and I'm chasing these chickens around, and this old farmer comes out, and he's got this half a broom handle with a coat hanger on it, and he walks up and just hooks the chicken. And I'm chasing it. He walks up and just hooks the chicken under its leg with this little coat hanger thing. Here you go. And he handed it to me. Oh, okay. But what a chicken will do is it'll take off and flap its wings and just kind of fly away for 5 seconds and land. They can't stay. They don't migrate. That'd be kind of funny, seeing a migrating flock of chickens, wouldn't it? To put that in a movie someday. So when you eat a chicken, the white meat, birds use their pectoralis muscles, the breasts of the chicken, to power their wings. Okay, birds use those. And because the bird isn't sustaining contraction and needing to go long distances with those wings, it doesn't need to have these fibers. So, chickens and domestic turkeys are going to have white fibers. Ducks, on the other hand, and geese. Have you ever had duck or goose? Okay, the breast meat of a duck or a goose is dark, because they're using those pectoralis muscles when they're flying south, or just flying in general. They need sustained energy to flap those wings a lot. So that muscle is going to be those slow twitch, the slow fatiguing muscle fibers. Same with chicken legs and turkey legs, dark meat. Okay, they're walking around most of the time. They have to have those muscles that support them as they walk. They can't fatigue very easily. Otherwise, they just kind of fall down. They wouldn't be able to walk very much. So on that note then, let's go ahead and compare slow twitch and fast twitch, keeping those things in mind, as I said. So resistance to fatigue. Slow twitch fibers have a very high resistance to fatigue. They don't fatigue very easily at all because they have these very slow, sustained contractions. Fast twitch have a tendency to, they have a low resistance to fatigue, meaning they fatigue relatively easily. We already said that slow twitch fibers produce ATP aerobically. Fast twitch fibers anaerobically. Now, keeping in mind this ATP synthesis type, aerobic versus anaerobic, what would you say about the size and number of mitochondria in a slow twitch type 1 fiber? Huh? There's going to be more mitochondria and they're going to be larger. More mitochondria means more places for the membrane and matrix reactions to occur. And larger just means that there's more space for the reactions and more surface area for the enzymes that are embedded in that intermitochondrial membrane. What about slow twitch fibers? Smaller and fewer, because they rely primarily on aerobic respiration. These fast twitch fibers are more for power. Slow twitch, endurance. We're also going to find in slow twitch fibers many capillary networks. That means that a larger supply of blood then can go to those tissues, bringing oxygen and fuel if necessary. We know slow twitch are red, fast twitch are white. What would you say about the diameter of these fibers? Which cell is going to be thicker? Slow twitch or fast twitch? Which is going to have more contractile proteins? Think about strength versus power. Or, excuse me, endurance versus power and strength. The fast twitch are going to have much larger diameter because they're going to have more myofibrils, more proteins. The more proteins you have, the more tension that can be produced. Slow twitch, smaller diameter. I mean, look at a marathon runner versus a weightlifter. Marathon runners, or runners in general, typically are very lean. A bodybuilder, mass. Okay? The muscles are larger for a lot of strength and power. Slow twitch, the diameter of those muscle fibers is smaller, but they, because of these characteristics here, they are better for endurance. Fast twitch fibers undergo a fast rate of glycolysis. Glycolysis occurs very, very rapidly. And to provide fuel for that process, they have high amounts of stored glycogen. Now, slow twitch fibers still undergo glycolysis. It's not slow, it's actually what they call a moderate rate. But glycolysis still happens. but actually glycogen content is going to be low. In fact, most of these slow twitch fibers are going to rely mainly on fatty acids and triglycerides as their fuel source. Think about a flock of geese migrating south. Maybe they fly 50, 100, 100, 200 miles without stopping. I don't know if that's true or not, but long distances. You got to keep flapping their wings. They're going to need an energy source that provides lots of ATP, and don't we get a significantly higher number of ATP molecules from fatty acids than glucose? Yeah. You ever had duck or goose? Goose especially is very fatty. Right there, that's why. Because they use those fat and those triglycerides as an energy source. Beta oxidation, and then the acetyl-CoA goes into citric acid cycle. Slow twitch fibers are going to have a high myoglobin content. That's why they're red. Slow twitch, lower. That's why they're white. They still have some, but not a lot. That high myoglobin content in the slow twitch fibers will provide a longer time. It provides more aerobic respiration for that bird or whatever it is to get to that steady state. I like using the bird's analogy because I think it really makes sense. Now, from a human standpoint, examples of slow twitch muscles would be your posture muscles. Muscles that you're using all the time that you don't really think about, but muscles that really can't fatigue. Your erector spinae. Those help keep your back upright. If those fatigue, you just kind of slump over. Fast twitch fibers, again, power and strength. Gastrocnemius. Biceps and triceps brachii. Let's talk a little bit about training. Endurance training is going to build the type 1 fibers. This is basically, endurance training is for aerobic exercises. Strength training is going to build the type 2 fibers. And of course, this is going to be more anaerobic. What does strength training do to the muscle cells? If I lift weights every day, eat right, eat healthy, what am I going to look like when I come back in the fall? Buff, right? My muscles are going to get bigger. I'm going to be... Am I adding more cells? If I bulk up from lifting weights, am I adding more cells? No. I'm increasing the size of my muscle fibers, skeletal muscle fibers. What is that called when a cell grows in size? Hypertrophy. What we're doing is we're actually increasing the number of myofilaments, the number of actin and myosin proteins. So those myofibrils will get bigger. Maybe you'll have more of them as well. You're just not adding more cells. The cells you have are getting bigger. That's hypertrophy. So you're getting increased protein synthesis then to increase those filament size. That's why a lot of weightlifters eat a lot of protein, take a lot of protein. Use protein shakes and protein supplements. They sell those big, huge things at the health food store. Building more muscle, you need more protein. Endurance training, on the other hand, does some things that are a little different. It adapts the anatomy of the cell more than anything. It will increase the number and size of the mitochondria. It increases the number of capillaries that are supplying blood to the muscle. It increases the number of respiratory enzymes. And when I say respiratory, I'm talking cellular respiration. Meaning now that there's more enzymes available to power these processes. It increases the amount of myoglobin available for oxygen storage. And as I mentioned earlier, it increases that lactate or lactic acid threshold. And you get less lactic acid production as well. And this is because the cell is more efficient at using the ATP it does make. It can make ATP, more ATP to be used, and so it doesn't have to rely on that anaerobic process. They can still, these type 1 cells can still undergo the anaerobic processes. But as the primary source of producing ATP, it uses aerobic. So endurance training. If you're a distance runner, we're talking running, swimming, biking, that's more endurance training. Strength training, basically talking weightlifting. Watch those World's Strongest Man competitions on ESPN 12 at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's what you see, is these guys throwing beer kegs over walls. See, they've all done this strength training. Now, cross training is a combination of both. And if you're training for basketball, hockey, tennis, exercises and sports where you need a combination of strength and endurance, and even some swimming and track events, track and field events, you do cross training as well. You need both strength and endurance. Now, if you compare the biceps brachii of a power lifter with one of a runner, obviously the runner is going to have a much less muscle mass, and the power lifter is going to have a lot more white fibers. So training and conditioning will actually change the anatomy of the cells, and you can change the proportion of white and red fibers you have in a muscle. All muscles have a combination of red and white fibers in them. It's just your training changes that proportion so that you have more or less of one or the other. Okay?